Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 4 of the Safe House podcast. We are so glad that you guys are here with us and tuning in. Today, we're going to be joined with Gabby, who is probably one of the first people I met at River City. It was really unfortunate, but she's just been a really great person just to get to know and has helped encourage me in my own faith and just push me in that area. So today, she's going to come onto the podcast and just get to share a little bit of her story with you guys. So, Gabby, why don't you go ahead and just take the floor?
Okay. Okay. I was born and raised in the church I currently attend. So, from Sunday school to high school, I was in church every Sunday. My mom would take us. My family would just go on Easter and Christmas, of course, but just during all the youth groups, all the summer camps and winter camps, I'd always attend and love to go. My sisters and I were all raised in the faith, and but that was only mostly because of my mom. She kind of read the Bible with us before bed and would pray with us before any kind of big event in our life would happen. So she was really the one that kind of made sure our family was knowing God and following God and just attending church in that way. So kind of this whole kind of journey in my faith started with my mom making sure her girls knew God. And thankfully we all still do. All my sisters still go to church, and they have kids now which are also being brought up in the church and attend church with us today, actually. So it's kind of just been a blessing to have my whole family know God and love God too.
So was your dad? What was your dad's relationship? So obviously, like your mom, like set up the foundation for you girls. Mm-hmm. But what was your dad's relationship and just with religion in general?
My dad went before the Mexico trip that we currently have, like building houses. He would go to our VBS Mexico trip, and he was on the men's team, and he's a plumber by profession, so he would do the plumbing for the new addition that they were constructing on a church in Mexico. Like when I was in middle school and elementary school, he would kind of go with us every other Sunday and attend. But I wouldn't say I think he knows God, but I don't think he is like a believer in every sense of the word. So I think my mom was like the main believer in our family who kind of watched over us and prayed for her girls and everything. But I just think my mom's faith had the biggest impact on me growing up, just because of all the things like my family has went through. My parents are currently divorced, so that kind of lasted throughout my whole entire childhood up until last year almost when the divorce was finalized. But my main inspiration for my faith came through my mom, where she was always praying for us, always praying over us. Her faith kind of provided for our family in a way, just with kind of the stresses that happened growing up, just financially, just watching over us, making us feel loved, and knowing that there's like a bigger purpose for everything that we're going through. Growing up, my parents kind of had a little bit of a not a little bit, but just kind of a rocky marriage, and that kind of impacted us growing up, just because they kind of stayed together, but it was hard for them to stay together.
Did they stay together just for the sake of you guys, or was it more they thought that they would eventually resolve itself?
I think they tried to stay together for their kids, but they were good parents. They were great parents. I love them, but it was just kind of a hard thing for us to sit through or to live through them having a rocky marriage. So my childhood was like very stressful for me. I can't really describe it fully, but it was just very stressful. Like when you get home, it'd kind of be there'd be an argument going on, and so you just feel that stress at home. So there was not like a huge stress reliever in my life other than being out of the house. I was heavily involved in sports growing up, inside of school and outside of school, heavily involved in like youth groups at church, which I would love to go. Like I said, I went to a lot of summer camps and winter camps, so there's a lot of things that kind of helped protect me.
It's like a moment's reprieve, kind of like a reset, just to be able to get out of that environment, and then you come home and like that's what you're immediately coming back to is just negativity.
Yeah.
What role do you think the church played, like, while you were going through that?
I would say it just kind of gave me like a second space, or a lot of people call it like your third space or something like that, where you have you're not at work, you're not at school, you have a third place to go to, and for me that was church. I was like super private about things that I was going through my life, but I kind of always felt like it was only between me, my sisters, and my family, like my parents. I didn't want anybody else to know what was going on, so I didn't really reach out to my middle school leaders at the time when the more bulk of the stuff was happening in middle school. It started when I was in kindergarten, but through middle school was probably like the toughest part. In high school was kind of they were separating, so it was kind of on and off through my childhood, and I think the church just gave me a place where I could just not worry about that stuff and just be able to not think about it. But also, if I had a struggle, I would try and put it in a biblical perspective of this may be happening for a reason. And that's kind of why I am not as angry as I think I would have been if I didn't have God in my life at the time, just because in middle school I used God's perspective to rationalize all of everything. Like, it was really tough and super stressful, but I knew in the end it would all be for a better purpose or greater purpose. And at that time in middle school, when I didn't really talk about it much, I had the leader in my middle school group kind of talk about what putting your trust in God meant. And I had accepted Christ in middle school in like 6th grade, after watching Passion of the Christ.
Yeah. That's what did it right there. Just
And then I took communion off a ping pong table. But anyway, so my middle school leader, she was talking about how like putting your trust in God is like the easiest thing to do. And I was okay, whatever. And so like later that night, maybe a couple weeks later, my parents were arguing. And so it was like before bedtime, so I was just like, we're kind of being kept up by arguing and stuff. And I was like praying. I was like, God, can you just, like, I trust that God is going to stop their arguing. And so like the next second they just kind of went quiet, and I was like, oh, what happened here? Like, I was just like, this is
So you like kind of started testing your faith a little bit?
a little bit. I was trying to, like, even though I was raised growing up, I went to church, I don't think I really had like a personal relationship with him. And so I would say that was kind of the start of me having my own personal relationship, even though it didn't really develop until almost recently. I would say like my more one-on-one faith with relationship with God, that was kind of like the very beginning of me testing God, like testing out who's God is. Is he really is he really who he says he is in the Bible? And what does it mean to actually put my faith in God? And at that moment I was like kind of amazed, but I was just like, what? Like, okay, I'm gonna go to bed now. And like, I kind of blew it off in the moment, but I thought it was just kind of like, dang, this is exactly what she said was gonna happen. And so it was hard, but like, it's also easy to trust that God's gonna watch over you. And I know, like, growing up, he was always watching over us, not because of our own faith, but just how he watched over my family and my sisters, and like provided for us through like all the hard times and stuff that went wrong and stuff that went right. I know it's just because he was watching over us at that time. And
So would you say, like, you obviously talked about your mom's faith, having big impact on you. Was your sister's faith like equally as impactful, or how did that kind of affect your relationship with God?
yeah,
Or was it different?
I think my mom was, her faith was way more impactful than my sister, just because I was like the baby of the family. So me and my mom were like we were close growing up, or like I was the baby growing up, so kind of you spent more time with your mom. I don't think my
Gotcha.
sisters I don't think my sisters are like the greatest impact on my faith. Not that they were taken away from my faith, or not that they didn't have faith of their own. It's just like your mom is an example, so that's what I followed.
yeah, they didn't have as big of a leadership role.
Yeah, they.
You still looked up to them, but it's like obviously like your mom tells you to clean your room, you're gonna clean your room. Your sister asks you to clean your room, you're gonna be like, yeah, you go do it.
I mean, sometimes I feel like I have like 5 moms, because just because I'm the youngest, so I have 3 older sisters. They're 30 and 28 and 24, 25, and so everybody's kind of telling me what to do, not like in a negative way. It's just I'm receiving a lot of guidance all the time. Like, there's so many people that want me to do right and learn from their mistakes and stuff. So there's a lot of people through the divorce. There's a lot of people kind of guiding me and protecting me through the crap that they went through. They didn't want their younger sister to go through. So when I say God has provided, I'm saying there's a lot of protection that I had over my life from my sisters, and like God's provisions over our family. So there's a lot of people that were taking care of me when I didn't know. So my sisters are like protectors, but my mom was the faith person in my life.
Yeah, and
That's cool.
I mean, you talk about your sisters and like your mom, obviously, but did not having a male role model that really showed you what faith is supposed to look like as a man, did that ever kind of like skew your interpretation of God? Because God is seen as like a heavenly father, and not really having like an older brother like your dad to really look up to faith-wise, did that kind of shape God's or your view of God in your mind at all?
My dad wasn't like a faith role model, but he still was a role model for me, because both my parents like very hard workers. So me and my dad were actually even closer than me and my mom growing up. So I was like a daddy's girl type of thing. So we did all my sports together. We did like sports like the big thing in my life. So that was me and him. So he wasn't a faithful model to me, but he was a hard worker, and so was my mom. So I get a lot of them from that. In regards to like him kind of changing who God was in my mind. That didn't change, honestly, just because I was in church so much and I saw so many like healthy marriages in there. And like in middle school, my middle school pastor had just like recently got married, and I just saw how good their marriage was, and it was kind of an inspiration. Even though I was like, then I was like, this is what a healthy marriage could look like,
Yeah.
and this is what people typically do, and like in the
That
high
is
school.
not what I was thinking about at that age. That's cool, yeah. What a beautiful marriage they have.
Reggie and I are like, yeah, man, you think we can jump that?
Yeah.
No, so in middle school, I did see like examples of healthy marriages, and while my dad wasn't super inspirational in my faith or like having my own faith, he was still present and was a good role model, work ethic, and just generally being there for his daughters and like all of our activities that we enjoy, like sports. For me, it was like mainly sports and school and stuff, but. Even through high school, I did have healthy examples of other men of God in my life. So I don't think I ever twisted who God was in my mind because of how my dad was. But he still is still a good role model to me today. It's just some things I take, some things I don't.
Yeah.
Seems like there's still a lot of love like between you and your dad.
Yeah, I'm working on it. Honestly, it's just like recently is something I've been like working on is just forgiveness. Is what our pastor Josh said from college group is in Mark, how the guy was healed because of his friend's faith. They ran him down through the roof, and I think he was paralyzed.
Yeah, he was paralyzed. He couldn't walk.
And so, but he was healed just because his friends believed so much. They brought him to see Jesus, and Jesus healed the man. And that kind of just got me thinking about forgiveness, and is there anybody standing in the way of their salvation? So if I was withholding forgiveness from my dad, or had a lot of anger or hate in my heart towards him, would I be standing in the way of his forgiveness? And so that's recently something I've just been like on my heart really heavy. Like, am I taken away from his salvation just because I want to be angry first? And that's just something I've been working on right now, or trying to. So there's things that I think I'm standing in my own way in regards to having a good relationship with both parents, or one parent, or my sisters. So I'm still learning every day how to have and maintain healthy relationships with my family. I love them all, obviously, but there's stuff I can work on to make it even better.
It's like it always changes too. It's always like figuring out new ways of, I think, loving your family in the certain dynamic or circumstance that you're all in as your lives change, which is just like growing pains, I think. But that's cool. I wasn't there. I didn't hear Josh's message, but
yeah, we know.
Yeah, it's like with family. My family is super, super, super close. My two older sisters have. My oldest has 2 babies, and my second oldest has 1. But just how they changed, like their roles as sisters towards me, has changed. Them being mothers now, and it's just like something really special when you get nieces and nephews. And as you guys know, it changes like the family dynamic, but it allows you to be like a sibling in like a completely different way that you really haven't thought of before, and serving a new way to serve your family that I've never done. Because I'm like, as a baby, I'm like, yeah, you guys can take me out to lunch, and you guys can, I'll take all your old clothes and stuff. But this has really been like testing grounds for how do I really serve my family and serve my sisters, especially since they've just done so much for me growing up. And so it's kind of a special thing to have happen recently.
It's a beautiful full circle moment where all the slaving they did away for you as a little baby as a family. But it's so cool to see that you're like, instead of throwing a tantrum that you're no longer the baby of the family, you're so ecstatic. And I think that's so proof of God working in your life, that you're like, oh, how can I give back for everything my family's done for me? Like, really just, this is your time to like really share with them, like, oh yeah, I'd love to babysit for a couple hours so you guys can go to church or just have a date night out. And I think that's just so cool to see that's your initial response, and how you're able to even grow and like see how, oh yeah, this is a different aspect of my family, but it's also so cool that my family is growing. You know, it's very beneficial to like just see how something you shared was how your sisters and how even yourself can share your own faith with your nieces and nephews. Like, is that not one of the most rewarding things ever, to be like, look, like it's just different when it is family because you care so much more
Mhm.
about them. Granted, if we could care about everybody in life like the same way we care about our family, there'd probably be way more Christians and way more love in there.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, like, we're all human, and yeah, obviously we get in our own way sometimes, and it's easier to hate somebody rather than forgive them. But yeah, with family, it's just so cool to see you even come full circle with this. But kind of moving on, so family is very important to you,
Mhm.
but as you started growing up, the family's divorce, and you started going to college, what was some of the issues that you started struggling with, especially dealing with family?
Yeah. So college is like not the college experience that's in the movies. I don't know if you guys know that. It's just not that way. So I moved in with my dad to move to Reno, 2 hours away. It's not far, but it just felt that way. Just because my family was so close and my nieces were being born and kind of just year after the next, we had a new life in the family. And it was just kind of hard to, I don't know if I'm like explaining how close me and my sisters are. It's just like we're very, very close. So leaving my family was like really hard, and I thought it was like the best choice just because my college was pretty much paid for by my dad's. My dad was a state employee at the time, so my college was paid for, and I was like, dude, just get your college paid for, go somewhere new, and do your 4 years and be done. I was like, okay, so that's what I did. And then, but during this time, it was just probably the hardest time, the hardest time in my life, in recent memory, just because just God was not at the center of my life at the time. So I didn't really prioritize going to church or just even having a personal relationship with him. And I still haven't really developed, or at this time, I still had not developed a personal relationship with God. I went to church all my life, but I would just like rarely read my Bible, pray. I would pray every so often, but like when stuff was really going on, I'd like start praying, or when I had a free Sunday, I would go to church, like this one church I went to a couple times, but God was really not who I was pursuing at the time. And so that just kind of, the distance I put really made everything like 10 times worse in my mind. But I was living with my dad, and I was still dealing with the same things that I had dealt with during childhood, and it was just difficult to know that things really hadn't changed much, and it was just difficult going through that alone, just because I didn't have my sisters with me at the time, and had all gotten married and whatever, not moved away, but just like moved with their husbands and had their own families now. So it was just difficult to feel like, ugh, like I'm really kind of here by myself doing this, and I had like a really idealized how fun it might be just to be living somewhere else and with the other parent and just hoping it might like go well, but it really was not the case. And on top of that, I just didn't go to church or prioritize that at all. So it just, the space was just too much. And funny enough, like not funny, but like
funny, haha.
Even though my parents had been separating through like elementary and middle school and high school, they hadn't been legally divorced yet. So, like my third year of college, they legally divorced, and we had to sell our childhood home, and so that was really devastating for me. But a week later, I moved out of my dad's house and with my cousin, and so it was just like a lot of things just going on at once. And that was kind of like the beginning of when everything kind of just got worse. Not that anybody was like intentionally inflicting anything on me. It's just like a lot of things to handle mentally, and it was just felt like everything was happening at once, and it was just hard. So I moved in with my cousin, which is a huge blessing. She didn't have to like take me in pretty much, but she did. I'll be very grateful for that always. But it was just hard to handle at the time by like, feeling like you're by yourself, doing it all by yourself, and it was just a tough time.
A lot of change,
Yeah.
just all at the same time, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was a lot of change all at once, and I didn't really know how to handle it. I was just trying to go to school and work and do all these things by myself. And even after I moved in with my cousin, it kind of just got a little bit more hard to deal with. I was going through school. I was doing school and work 24/7. I was doing summer classes and working at night, and then doing my internship the whole day, and it was just too much. And so that was probably my lowest point, just trying to handle all these things at once. And I wouldn't really call it, there's like a lot of isolation there because I didn't have too many friends in college, and I just didn't want to make them, honestly. I wasn't pursuing other friendships just because I had my friends at home who I'd come see all the time. I would come down to Rancho so much, like every weekend, almost every other weekend I would come down just because I missed my family so much, and I just didn't want to be there, and I wasn't spending any time in Reno to find new places to go or new friends to make. I had one classmates that I liked hanging out with, but that was kind of rare. But that was kind of what made everything worse mentally. I was feeling really isolated, just kind of alone almost. Even though I was living with my family, like my cousin, it just felt lonely. So I didn't really know how to deal with that after growing up in a big family.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of difficult, but
And I mean, that's one of the biggest tactics the devil will try and use against you. For anybody, any Christian, he'll try and isolate you first. Like, I think that's why it's so important to go to church and to build these kinds of relationships that you can have that other voice. Like Reggie and I have been doing this really intentionally the past couple months, where it's like just having somebody to tell you you're not crazy, or even just listen to you and like be like, yeah, dude, like that's actually so unbiblical. Like you're not alone in this. And that's one of the biggest things the devil will try and do is he'll try and tell you you're completely alone. You're the only one struggling with this. And I think that's one of the biggest things he used about you. Like even when you were a kid, the devil was always trying to isolate you with making you feel like you needed to keep your family matters to yourself instead of being like, even when you were in church, you're like, I'm not going to tell anybody because I don't want to burden them or I don't want them to know. And I think that just went even so much farther as you continued to grow up going into college. Then it was like, all right, this is actually horrible, and just really started to manifest that idea. But I'll let you touch on this in a little bit. But obviously, that's what pushed you to your breaking point.
Yeah, there is even though I had loved living with my cousin, it was just like the timing of everything fell in like her house is where I knew, looking back now, like it really is night and day for me, honestly. When I'm looking at, I had no personal relationship with God. I wasn't reading my Bible. I didn't find myself connecting to a church. I was going to church every so often, but there was no real community or connection there. And that's not anybody at the church's fault. Obviously, like I need to pursue that community to receive it. So there was just so many things I wasn't doing that pushed me away from God, and I kind of brought it on myself, really. I didn't do anything to pursue that relationship, so there was no relationship to be had. Obviously, God was still pursuing me, and looking back, like everything that He provided in college during that time was, like, it's kind of unreal, like to see how He provided when I wasn't even thinking about Him really at all, and so it's just wonderful to see how everything was prepared for me when I got back to Rancho, and just the community that I was missing there is like everything that I found here. So when I finally moved back and finished, I don't know how I graduated college at that time. I was not prioritizing school, and like luckily I finished early, and now I'm back. And as soon as I finished with my credits in my school, I was back home. I was not waiting until the semester finished. I was immediately back home, just because that's where I wanted to be, obviously. And
car was already packed as soon as the last answer for the final was done. Just gone.
It truly was.
Bye, professor. So long. You can mail me my degree.
Yeah, so I was back, and like that was February of last year. So I came back and then started going to college group because my sister Danny and her best friend Kiara came back, and they were already going to college group, and I was like, okay, that's what I'm gonna do. Like I want the feeling of just having the community I had in high school, and just going to a small group or youth group every Wednesday or something, whatever it was. I wanted that back. Just because in college I would pray. When it was super hard, I would pray. I was like, and this is only every so often. I wasn't praying every day, like I said, but I would pray. I would pray for my future and my own family in the future and the family I currently have, and just think of what it could be. Like, give yourself something to think about, to work towards in the future. Like it's not always going to be like this, so you'll make it out and it'll be fine later. So when I finally got back to start attending the church I currently attend, I got back into community with college group, and I met Reggie there a couple weeks later, and then a couple months later Dylan started coming around, and
yeah. I think I met you at Mexico. I think was the first time, but yeah, and you knew Caleb. So they were telling me you were a really good hard worker, everything.
Yeah, they absolutely not.
Whatever.
Just kidding.
No. And then you like hung a door, and I'm like, what the heck? You can hang a door or
like
what? Yeah, yeah.
My dad always wanted a son. So. Yeah, so I finally got back in college group, and Josh was like, Gabby, my pastor Josh was like, Gabby, you gotta go to Mexico. I'm like, I don't really want to. At this time, like, I still had not, like, fully gone back to renewing my relationship with God, so I was like, I don't know. Like, I went to Mexico in high school 2 times, and I was like, Josh, I don't know. I don't really want to. It's like in 2 weeks. Like it was like 2 weeks before he tried to get me to sign up. I'm like, okay, I'll go. So then I went, and that's when I really started to reconnect with old friendships in college group. I left college group in high school, and 3 years later, there's a new set of people who I didn't really know. I knew Caleb and some friends I also grew up all my life with in church, like Spencer and Lucas, and been meeting new friends, and I didn't really truly connect with those people until I started going to Mexico. I went to Mexico and made those friendships, renewed them again, and got back in touch with them and stuff. But I would say like in Mexico was kind of like the beginning of where I am now. Honestly, it's just that Josh pushed me to go to Mexico. I was like, okay, Josh, like, whatever, I'll do it. And so I was there, and it just kind of felt like the very beginning kind of just felt like another Mexico trip to me. I don't think I was really prepared to go. Even I don't regret going at all, but I wasn't prepared to go when I first take the first 8-hour trip. I was like, okay, what am I gonna, I'm gonna work for a week. But I think the middle of the trip really kind of set things off for me to want to pursue God more. It was funny because they have this encouragement wall in Mexico where you have everybody's name is up there. You can leave cards for people to encourage them throughout their week. You're doing a great job, whatever. I'm lucky to have you as a teammate, whatever you want to say to encourage people through their work week. And then I just remember having a conversation with Caleb that night, or one of those nights, about just where I am in my faith and stuff that had happened. And then it was just really kind of nice to talk with somebody about like where I truly was. I'm not really doing that well, but here I am. So the next day I got an encouragement note, and he was like, oh, something, can't remember it, but something about me being a woman of God. And I was like, dang, I really did not feel that way at all. I'd never felt that way before, even though I was raised Christian and had God in my life my whole, from like middle school until now. I didn't really feel like a woman of God, and I didn't feel like I was really being that. So to hear somebody else call me that, I was like, oh, this is nice. I was like,
Yeah, it's crazy how that title, even just like woman of God, I can't relate to that. But something I've really reflected on is like, to be a man of God, what does it mean to even carry that title? And like, oh, like to be a man of God, you should have these characteristics, and that's where I should be reaching for. And like to have that and be like, I don't know. To me, it's like, yeah, that would do with that to me, you know.
Yeah.
Reggie's all, dude, like you're a man of God, you know. I'd be like, whoa, like I don't feel like I'm quite there yet. Like obviously, like striving for it.
I mean, no one's, gonna reach perfection, but
Yeah.
I think that's hard because I think also it depends on who you are, but for me, it's easy to kind of, and I think this is how the devil wants to like trick us is by villainizing ourselves, and like, oh, well, I'm a terrible person, I'll never be that good or whatever. And so that's why going back to having people in your life to kind of be able to tell you what the lies are that the devil's feeding you, and then that being able to speak life into you and be like, no, like actually, you may see yourself like this, but I see you, you're doing a lot of good here. So, anyways, yeah.
I think like like what you guys are saying about being isolated from community was what really one of the things that pulled me apart from God. Like even moving away, you could call that isolation, but just not finding community there and just being separated from other believers really just did nothing for me at that point. So when I came back and like had community here, and immediately just like felt a flood of just being accepted back into college group, and it just felt like I just picking up right where I got off in high school, and it just felt so nice to come back to people who love me and kind of know me from growing up together. And um, when they called me that, I was like, dang, like in Reno, I prayed for the future that I want, the family that I want, who I want to be when I grow up. Like, but to hear that, I was like, that's something that I have to now pursue because I want it so badly, and like I don't currently have, or at that time I didn't feel that way, even though I accepted God, I didn't currently feel that way. So when I was called that, I was like, dang, now I have to live this way, and that's the way I want to live. So the rest of the Mexico trip kind of came and went, and it was nice getting to know Reggie or on the team together, and other people that I hadn't really talked to before, but had started to form new friendships there. But like when I came back from Mexico, I was like, okay, now I have a renewed purpose. I know what I want to do. And to me, Mexico, I love Mexico just because how it feels to serve. Like we're all called to serve, but working with your hands and having this finished house at the end of the week, I just served God.
It's huge. I it's crazy because you speak that way of Mexico, like had such a huge impact on your life, and also it's very similar to when I started going to college group at River City. I didn't know anybody, and then I was like, well, everyone's saying Mexico is how you meet people, so I decided to do it, and I had a lot of the like similar experience of just work in like my life and other people's lives, and then also going from, I guess I kind of didn't really think that those things happened when you got reached a certain age to college or whatever or adulthood, uh because it felt kind of like I was back in middle school at camp again, and people were encouraging me and like we're writing, yeah, writing notes on a wall to each other, and I'm like, wow, this is this is amazing. Like it was super hopeful and impactful, but
Oh, geez, now I feel like I should have dodged college group for another couple months. Like, you guys have this great experience. I'm like 2 months early, man. Like, I already have the community now. Like, darn.
But after Mexico, it's kind of you just come back from Mexico and it's like you're just feeling so like the Lord. But then you go back to real life and gotta go back to your job and stuff and regular life. But as I kind of had the renewed purpose of, man, I really need to start living for God. If this is who I want to be, a woman of God is in my future, then I need to start doing things to truly like live up to that title. And like we're never gonna be perfect or reach perfection, but you can try. You need to pursue God with all your life. And but after that, like I would attend college group, and I would always go with my sister. And it was just nice to have your family with you to do. It's just special to have your sister with you to pursue God together. So we were just doing that until summer retreat came around, and not to have all these highs at like summer retreat in Mexico and stuff, but it truly was another part where I really went deeper into my faith. They had this book called Rhythms where you would do like challenges for like 30 days, and you would do some service projects, or you had to pray 3 times a day and do all these things, and not pressure you, but challenge you to share your faith with people. And at that time I had never shared my faith with other people. I don't know if it's not good, but
look how far she's come.
But I had never shared my faith with people explicitly, like I'm a Christian and blah 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 blah. Like in high school, I invited my friends to come to high school group. In middle school, the same thing, but I hadn't really said this is why I believe what I believe, and nor had I had the knowledge to articulate that. Like I was not gonna be like, yeah, I kind of just grew up here. I'd be here next Wednesday too. That was just kind of my life. Like I'm just gonna keep showing up. But now, like at work, I had opportunities to share my faith at work, and it was scary, but God really does give you the strength and the courage to do it. Like I was not, at work I'm like, I know I'm not really shy to you guys, but like at work I'm more reserved. So at first I was really like reserved, but I was talking with my coworker and I was like asking her like ways I can pray for her, and that book really made me act in faith and not just say be nice to your drive-through barista or whatever. Like you have to like actually
Which you should still do.
But you actually have to share your faith and be intentional in like who you're talking to and what you're talking about. And so I asked if I could pray for her, asked if she had known God before, because she had like this one coworker had a tattoo of a cross on her neck. I was like, oh. And I was like, oh,
did you think it was pretty, or do you actually believe?
And I was like, this is a conversation starter. So I would ask about, her faith and stuff. And then I had a new coworker, and she actually believed in God and had a relationship with God. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. Like opportunities just kept presenting themselves to share my faith. And I was like, this is so cool. This is so weird. Like the same feeling that I had when I put my trust in God when my parents were arguing, and when I was a kid and they were arguing, that's like the same like wow that I felt when these opportunities came up now to share my faith. I was like, oh, this is so, what a coincidence. I can't believe this is all lining up for me. And now I have to do what God has told me to do. And I can't say no because it's so lined up for me. I just can't miss this opportunity, right? But there's just things like that would happen at work that were just be too good to be true, and like you'd have to act on it.
Well, and going back to like being a man or a woman of God, you talk about these coincidences that just happen to happen. And when I first came back to the faith, I had instances like that for like almost 2 weeks where it's just like, oh, okay, God, this is what you pray for. And I think that's so true, to not to be like providence gospel, but like when you really pray and that's your intention behind it, God will give you those opportunities to be. I think you and I both were like, man, we have to tell everybody, like, this is so great if we can just like get to share with one more person. How can I share the gospel with them? God will 100% give you those opportunities. And I think that's why so many Christians just get comfortable and they're like, oh yeah, like I just haven't told anybody about the gospel because, like, one, well, you're probably not trying to. You're probably not really hungry to want to go out and tell people, hey, I have this amazing news. Somebody came and died for all your sins and has this way for you to be forgiven. All of the past guilt you've had in your life, all of that is erased. Like, I think a lot of people are just like, yeah, I know Jesus.
They get comfortable.
You know, like, there's nothing, like, to them, they don't feel like it's worth sharing. But then, like, when you really start to push yourself to be a man or woman of God, that's when God is going to be like, okay, like, if you're chasing after my own heart, I'm going to give you what you're asking for, because your will for your life and my will are aligned. And that's when all these opportunities, and we can sit here and be like, man, there's just so many coincidences where God's just like opening all these doors. And it's like, well, yeah, like, if you're walking in his will, like, yeah, God will make it happen.
Yeah.
And then we just sit here and we're like, that's so cool, you know, and like all these coincidences. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah, just even outside of work, like with friends that would kind of come up and talk, or not, there would be doors that would open with friendships that I've had that are pretty old, but I've had them for a long time, and people would randomly ask me questions. Before I was starting to be more, like, stepping out in faith more and just, like, kind of acting what God has put on my heart for in whatever situation it was, I was still kind of insecure in my, like, biblical knowledge, because like I said, I didn't really read my Bible growing up, unfortunately. I had wished I had started all this sooner, but now I'm here. But I wish I had known. Yeah, I wish I had, like, known, like, how to, like, apply these things in my real life. And I wish I could tell you, people who are asking me questions, I wish I could tell you everything, how I feel about what God has done for me in that moment. Like, if only you knew what God has done for me, you'd listen up, right? Like you'd start going to church, but you just kind of have to be patient with those people, and the only thing you can do is really pray for them if they are not really open to receiving. And everybody's on their own kind of timeline with God, so I don't want to rush anything for people, but I just want them to know the option is there. But at Mexico, actually, I felt like brand new Christian. Like, I didn't know anything. I started coming to around college group, and I felt like everybody had, like, some type of degree in theology, and I was there just, like, reading VeggieTales or whatever. Like, I didn't really know much. That's how I felt. Anyways, that's how I felt. So, and so I was not feeling ready to share the gospel with anybody, because I didn't really know. Not that I didn't know the gospel, just like I didn't read it, so I didn't know exactly how to articulate it to people. And so that was kind of like the insecurity that I had, like, the beginning of last year. Like, I didn't really know how to explain this to you. Even in college, I don't even know. One of the things in college is I don't even know if God is real. Not that he wasn't real, but is it all something in my head? Am I just, like, talking to?
Yeah, are you crazy?
Like, am I just thinking this? Yeah, I think, like,
He real for me or not? Yeah.
pretty much.
Your faith.
I felt so isolated and, like, lonely at the time. I had no personal relationship with him, and it was just kind of routine that I fell into. And so at that time, I was just super isolated. I felt like I had no purpose, no really identity. My identity was not in Christ at the moment, just because I was not going to church or reading my Bible or anything. So I just felt like I belonged nowhere. But what that kind of changed, I had a renewed purpose after Mexico and coming back to college group, that I do have a purpose. And Gabby, you do love to serve. Like, look at Mexico, you do love to serve. You have your family, you have new nieces and new nephews. Like, this is what my purpose, what I kind of felt recently, is my purpose is to serve others. Every Christian's purpose is, but right now I think that's what it is for me. I don't know if you guys feel differently, but after having opportunities to share at work and just with my old friendships that I've had, and you have to be a living testimony to what God has done in your life. So that's what I was trying to do. Whether it was perfect or, like, good or not, I don't know. But it was just kind of encouraging to see everything line up for me and being able to share and just be more outwardly Christian. I feel like growing up, it was just kind of like, yeah, I'm Christian. I go to youth group and Sunday school. But, like, now I'm adult, and now I have to actually live how I say I live.
Also, it's, always good to remember we're just throwing the seeds out.
Well, and I'll ask this to everybody, but what is some of the things, like, it's something I've been struggling with quite a bit recently, is just, like, I have this new fear of when I go to speak that I'm going to somehow do more damage than good, which I know sounds absolutely ridiculous, but like yourself, I was like, maybe I'm too unknowledgeable, and when I go to speak, I'm going to lay somebody down the way wrong path. But, like, I know ultimately that's not true, but that has kind of stumped me from being able to talk, and now I'm second guessing myself with everything I go to say. But what's kind of something you guys have used or just learned from sharing the gospel of, oh, it's really not fear, it's just all in your head?
I think when I'm sharing with, like, my friends who don't know God or had questions about God, I would always Even before we're doing this, I would pray for guidance and clarity in my words. Like, I don't want to accidentally misinterpret the gospel either, but, I ask God, can you please guide me in this way? Or you ask for his will to be done. He'll always answer your prayers that way. If you're living by his will, he will be with you in that. So your intentions are good when you're trying to share with your friends or whoever it is. So I don't know. To me, it's always helpful to just kind of pray for clarity. And I always use additional resources to make sure I'm saying the right things, like I'm not misinterpreting anything. So I use 2 apps if somebody has a question I don't really know the answer to, or I'm like have like a half answer. My friend Lydia showed me Enduring Words, so it's kind of like a breakdown of all the verses and different theologians, their perspective on it or their takes on it, and then through the word kind of just gives you like a general breakdown of scripture. And so if I use those 2 generally, I get a good idea or a lot of supporting evidence or takes on what I'm trying to communicate to a friend if they have a question. But besides that, I just pray for God's will be done, and hopefully I'm able to speak clearly. Like, it's out of my hands at that point.
Yeah, no.
Because it's like, what's the verse in Matthew where it's like the teachers of the gospel be
judged?
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, no. Oh Lord. Do I really want to be a teacher? Like,
I think it's better to say something than nothing, and so ultimately, if your heart's in the right place and you're trying to come from, be humble, while you're talking to this person, I think it'd be pretty hard to kind of mess their life up completely.
Yeah. I mean, what I've kind of told myself to calm the waves of just doubts and fears is God can do a lot with your little. So if I just try and like share my little bit of knowledge, I'm like, okay, here's my little bit. I know God can absolutely turn even my whole life is an example of turn something bad for good. So even if I'm badly talking to somebody about religion, God can still use that and actually make it mean something, because God's the one that ultimately speaks to everybody's heart.
Yeah. One thing I always like, if somebody's recently had a friend ask me a question I kind of knew a half answer to, and so I use what I said. But I also just honest with them, like, honestly, I don't know much about it. Like, you'd have to probably do some more research. I don't know 100%, and I also want them to grow in their faith too, so I'm like encouraging, like, you guys, you could probably like look at this website or whatever, but I don't pretend to know more than I know. So I think people are receptive to that. I'm not trying to be like this super Christian, know all the answers and Bible thumper on you. Like, this is what I know, and this is my take on it, and this is what the Bible says, but beyond that, you'd probably have to do more research on your own, because I only know so much at this time. And that's generally what I do.
And it's like, I don't know, you guys watch Cliff and Stewart?
A little bit.
He's like, I do not know. Have you seen that, like, famous, and like that's kind of blown up, and but I think that's like such a good, just to be humble before people. Like, look, I don't know this, but like we can try and figure it out together and come to an answer that makes sense to the both of us.
At River City, like, being a middle school leader I try not to be. Obviously, there's a place of maturity that you have to keep. Level. You're older and you've been through more experiences. More innately, but at the same time, like, that doesn't invalidate their struggles, and it's like I still struggle what they struggle with. So it's like we are always able to connect on that. It's just important to kind of realize we all share the same fight.
Yeah, and kind of bringing it back to community. I mean, something you and your sister started doing was just like the dinners that you guys do here, and I mean, shout out River City. This church has been absolutely phenomenal. Phenomenal. Like, even for me, like, you can hear, like, you ask anybody in the college group, they'll give you a rundown. But even for me and like everything I went through, the community that I was just kind of welcomed into here, and we've talked about it with our community here that we have, just how quickly and easily I kind of fit in with everybody. And how even for me, like a lot with you, like I was so afraid the rest of my life I was going to be absolutely alone by myself and nothing to live for. And then coming here, it was just the biggest arms open ever. And then something you guys did that really made this place feel like a home was you guys just had dinners. And I was like, this is the most bizarre thing, because that's something I'd always wanted as a kid growing up, was to have like a bunch of friends and to have that house where I could like just house people. That's something I've always wanted, is just like be able to like, oh, like you need somewhere to stay, you can come in. And just like getting to meet you guys has been such just an amazing blessing. And even when I was able to offer up like my dad's house for all of you guys. I literally prayed to God that night, and I was like, thank you so much for this. Thank you for filling this house with laughter. And even seeing my dad's face was so rewarding, just to, because I know he has those same feelings. He loves to host things, and like just that I was able to, through God, like make these connections, and then also have you guys come up to my own house and like be able to cook for you guys. Like it's just been so rewarding. And there's just something about sitting around dinner and with friends and just having that community that really just like breaks that fourth wall of like this isn't just church and like
church friends,
we're just church friends are just like we're going through the motions. So that's like one of my favorite things that you guys started doing, and like it has just helped me feel so much more at home, and just like having that community, and just like even the relationships I built with all of you guys, just how as iron sharpens iron, like a friend sharpens a friend, and just how beneficial that's been. So if you guys aren't in a community, that is one of the best things I think you can do as a Christian, is even just find that one person. Just find that one person that you can come to with your sins, your worries, your doubts, and it's amazing what God will do with just that little bit, and how much relief you can get from that. But yeah, I just want to say like thank you guys so much for just opening up your house. Like to me, it has just been one of the biggest blessings that I really do thank God for every day.
Yeah, I mean, I love those dinners too. It came from the Rhythms book. Like you're supposed to like serve friends or something, or have friends over for dinner. I'm like, we should just have a lot of people over for dinner.
We should just do a lot.
So we would start doing these dinners, and probably at some point there was like 14 of us in this living room. There was a lot of setup and prep work when there was 14 guys, but it was something that me and Danny like love to do, is like host people, just because we want people to feel like you're saying welcome and at home at some other. At that time, we were pretty much strangers, and you're just
I was still
at that time. But
you're like, who's your friend Reggie?
Find him on the side of the street down there.
But it's just something we love to do, just to have it. Just, I mean, the feeling of cooking for somebody and having them in your home and making them feel welcome, and just having people relax in your house when they're not your real family, is a special feeling to me and to Danny, I'm sure. Just to be able to serve your friends that way, and just have. When I say I was like starving for community, I wanted community very badly. So
like I'm gonna cook up some meals.
So having people over was like the community that you have to build community. So that was the way that we did it at the time, for those months that we did it. So that's how we got not what we wanted, but like that's how we built the connections that we had today. And that's just, I mean, I don't think we're like super best friends, but I'd say we're pretty good friends in my eyes. So that's just like God really moved through being obedient to serving your friends, and the Rhythms book is kind of just what
laid it all out.
Kind of like got this thing going. But it is a special thing for us too, like to have people here and just feel like they're welcome and at home at somebody else's house, and I loved it. So we should probably get that back going sometime.
Yeah, probably it's been a minute since we've done dinner.
Somebody's hungry, Dylan.
Yeah. Open up the table.
What was I gonna say with that? Oh yeah, but like besides that, other ways you have to build community is like the small group portion of your faith. So I remember my friend. I think it was after Mexico or something. My friend Lydia came up to me and she was like, "Do you want to join my small group?" And I was like, "Maybe. I'll think about it. I'll text you." Because I really didn't want to go, just because I knew small groups were a place where you have to kind of get vulnerable and you have to really share what's going on in your life now. You really don't want to. I don't want to. But I did anyways. And at first I wasn't the most consistent small group attendee. But eventually I learned so much from those girls. They truly challenge you in your faith, and really get good perspective on a lot of things that they're going through. Like you and your middle schoolers, you go through the same thing at different ages, but in my small group we went through like the same thing, and we're still going through like, the same thing, and it's just kind of spooky. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I'm going through. And I just remember talking about forgiveness earlier, not letting myself stand in the way of somebody else's salvation. My friend Sage, who was previously on your podcast, was telling me on the other side of fear, there's freedom. Like, so on the other side of like you holding back from forgiveness is like there's actually freedom in forgiveness that you're kind of holding yourself back on. And oh my gosh, you guys are so wise. How do I get like that? And so like they've really been like inspiring me, my faith, to actually be challenged and to live outwardly as a Christian, and just to grow in my faith. The action steps we do every week to make sure you're kind of like forcing yourself to grow or giving yourself opportunities to grow has really been helpful to just be who God intended me to be. And that's just something that has responsible for a lot of growth in my life, honestly. Just my small group ladies. Love them.
I can say that's probably, I mean, I'm still very, very new to being Christian. But that's probably been like one of the coolest things. I've still only been a part of like, this group for a little bit, but like even just seeing how your faith has grown since when I first came here and seeing you now, like it is, there's a difference too. And like that gets me so excited to like see that. And just like even with Reggie's faith, like since we started this podcast, seeing how he's changed, like it is so just absolutely amazing to see God's hand. Like when I have my own friends, you know, working to strive to be more like God every single day, and that I know I can go to them, like that is just building more on community. And even some of my coworkers, how I've been able to help them and how they've been able to help me, and just see every single day we're just getting one step better, you know, 1% better at being Christian. Not that you're ever going to obtain it, but to have so many people around me now that are all striving to be more, that is something I've been praying for. And it's just so cool to see that around me now, where it's like, man, if I stumble, there's going to be somebody like, no, come on, pick it back up. We're still going forward, whether you like it or not.
To talk to someone who's maybe curious, or maybe curious about God or a new believer, what would be some advice to them?
I would say like research why your doubts. I think like for myself when I was in college and I was like, why do I believe this? Once I started to really pray to God and ask him what he was doing, he revealed himself to me in several different ways. Just him moving in my life, it made me know he was always there. So just say if you have doubts, just research them. Ask your friends or ask a Christian who you know is establishing their faith. Why do they believe that? Or just take a step out in faith. Honestly, just if you're scared, you still have to. I mean, I was kind of scared to do this and just to share at work, but you know, you have to do it. So just trying to be bold and take a step, because I think God does a lot with the little that we have. So it's true. So I just be bold in your faith. Just take a little step and just kind of see what happens. Just pray and see what happens. Serve God and see what happens. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Gabby, thank you so much for coming on and being vulnerable and sharing your testimony with the world now. Shout out River City for just the amazing college group we've been building here and just the doors it's opened. We hope you guys really enjoyed it. And if you have anybody that, you know, might need an encouraging story, make sure to share it with them. And thank you guys so much for watching.